Hello and welcome back. Today we will continue our effort to run all the storage components locally just to understand better the internals. And we will continue with storage nodes, but the usual disclaimer, this is not for public network. If you would like to join to the storage public networks, then please follow the official documentations, or I can create a video in the future. This is something totally different. This is some kind of development environment or private environment where we will start all the components locally. And in previous videos, we already configured the satellite API, the satellite admin, the databases. We covered the identities, that what are those TLDR, the TLS certificates. And now we can start with starting storage nodes to store real data. So we need a directory, and we already switched to use the supervisor D, which is just a simple helper to run commands like storage node run. We need the identity directory. There's something what I need to generate. We need a config, and eventually we will copy paste it to have more than one storage nodes. And what we usually did is just use this defaults release just to make sure that all of our configurations are realistic. So defaults release. It's a default if you downloaded the binaries from a release, and it looks good. Storage node 0. Okay. So the next step is we need to generate an identity. So we will do it as usual. Identity create storage node identity. There can be the current directory, and difficulty is 0. So usually for public network there is some difficulty restriction, but we will turn it off for our use case. Okay, so it's generated in the storage node directory. I would prefer to move them to the directory itself, right? Looks good. The next step is that we need to initialize the storage directories. So let's initialize it. Config the storage node 0. What is missing? Identity directory. Okay, it's initialized. So my main reason to initialize it to have this storage dir verification file. Actually, if I check it, this is the only file which is generated. Well, actually, I have some new empty directories, but this is the important part, and this is nothing more, just the binary representation of this identity. This is just make sure if you move around the directory and reconfigure something, you don't mess up all the configuration, because if the storage directory is missing or the verification is not there because you started to use another storage or storage directory of another storage node, it will fail. So it already generated the config, but I don't like, because I prefer to, so you can see a lot of defaults here, but what I would prefer is just using manually selected values and use only just the minimal settings. So I prepared a very first version, so you can use any email and wallet. It should be a wallet, an Ethereum wallet, valid Ethereum wallet address. So I just generated one. You can also just do 000 if you know the exact number of digits. So it starts from 20 to maybe 30. I'm not sure. So these ports should be specified because the satellite API and the storage node has the same defaults, and we are running everything locally. We don't have Docker containers, so I had to specify a different address. This is the important address. This will be used by the clients and the satellite, and the others are supposed to be used only from local. So let's start it. Still, we have some other missing configuration and we will add them, but let's try it out. How does it work? Supervisor D. Oh, storage at home. So here we have a supervisor D conf that we just edited, and at the beginning there is an HTTP port, so it's nothing more just running all the commands, and we'll have a web interface. Supervisor D. And yeah, it's starting. Exited. We have to check what's going on. So it couldn't start because space issue, I guess. Disk space requirement not met. We need more space. By default, it tries to share 1 terabyte of data. But actually, this is what usually we should do, is just check the standard error and try to understand the logs and just put more configuration. So in this specific case, if I check the space, then you can see that we need to configure the space as well. So I configured the space parameters, a Storagenodes/0 config. You can see that the disk space is 1 gig, and I have a very generous minimum disk space requirement. And now I just restarted the supervisor D, and now it's supposed to be running, but still it doesn't work if we check the standard error. There are other problems, so we need other configuration. I just plan to share, because this is the most typical error. So let's check it from here. Storagenodes0 log. Oh, time. A lot of stuff. Node rate limited by ID. It means that we were able to connect to the satellite, but it was unsuccessful, and after it just retried the storage node, and the satellite rate limited the requests. So the problem here actually is that it's not allowed where are the IP addresses? But there is another problem, that by default we use the official satellites. Trust. There is this trust sources, this one, and by default it downloads the file from the internet to find all of the currently available satellites. So this is something definitely what we should adjust, because this is the default, and I would like to use my own satellite. So my own satellite is running here, and there is a standard error, and fortunately we have the full address here, right? So this is the identity and this is the server. So what we need is just configure this one. I adjusted all the required configuration just to make the video shorter, but let's review it. So we have these storage trust sources. I added the satellite admin, and we also need to adjust the configuration of the satellite API itself. So I added these. So this is required to use the local IPs, what I used. You don't need it all the time. Uh, for example, if you run it from a Kubernetes cluster, then the IP addresses won't be local IP addresses. The second, if you see this error, it means that there is a requirement to sign the storage node identity by an external signer. This is introduced in the public network just to control the beta period and who can join to the network. It's not very important today. This one is the difficulty what I mentioned earlier, or this is the error message, and if you see this error message, then you should definitely adjust the difficulty. We generated one with the easiest difficulty with 0, and the production default is 36 to avoid some kind of attacks when somebody starts a lot of new processes. It's harder to start a lot of new processes because you need processing power to generate difficulty. And after adjusting all of these settings and restarting the satellite API in the storage node, it supposed to be working and running without any error. So the only remaining part is copy pasting all the storage node and having multiple instances, let's say 10. And the other important part is just to adjust the erasure coding parameters, because by default we need 110 nodes in the public network, and we use production settings, so we should just lower the replication numbers. And after some adjustment, here we are. So if I check the status, I have all of the storage nodes, and with uplink CP, it's supposed to work. And it worked earlier with the storage node because the small files are stored in the storage in the database. But this is 4 megabyte files, and if I just go one of the storage node and check all the files, you can see that in the storage directory there are the blobs, and here I can see all the real blobs which are stored. So every time I upload a few storage node will have more blob files. So let's just double check the configuration what I modified. The storage nodes are quite simple. Node. The only thing what I did is just copy pasted and adjusted the port. So there was one more port what I had to set up. This is the console address, which is also useful to check the web UI of the storage node, and I used some convention to have the index here. So this is the 0, this is the 1, and all of the settings are the settings what we already discussed. But we also required some configuration modification on the satellite side. So let's check this as well. So these are the settings what we discussed earlier, and these were required to join with storage nodes, which may not signed by an authority or a local storage nodes, or they don't have the difficulty. These are just creating some test data to make it easier to testing, and this is for node selection. So when I upload, the satellite API is supposed to select a few nodes to store the real data. One thing is that for the public network, there is a vetting period. So after certain actions or time, the nodes are marked as old. And usually, low 5% nodes are from the new nodes, and all the others are the proven old nodes. So I had to check it because I have just new nodes, so I set it to use all the news. This sync IP is also for the public network, so it tries to avoid some kind of unsafe placement where multiple pieces are placed on the same subnetwork. And it should be uh, turned off, and it will be changed very soon because we will have a more flexible configuration with placement. And also the minimum disk space I had to adjust because everything is running locally. I have necessity. I don't have 1 terabyte, or I don't know what is the default, a few hundred gigs, I think. And the most important settings is the erasure coding, where I say that I will upload 8 pieces and I need 4 to recover the data. So other 4 can be lost. But if it's under 6, I will be worried, and the repair checker or the repairer will repair those. And actually, when we upload, we start to upload 10, but after 8, we will give up. So the fastest 8 will win. That's also for the public network, just filter out some very small nodes. And this is the size of the the small portion of the piece which will be encrypted as in a unit. So this is some kind of elementary unit. So that's the most important. So that's why it's possible to upload only with 10 nodes, because I said let's pick 10 node, upload the fastest 8, and in a way where it can be recovered even just from 4. But this erasure coding, I think this will be covered in a next video because it's a more complex topic. And now we are just can be happy that finally we will have a working storage ecosystem locally where we can just upload and download files. And similar to the erasure coding, we still have other things to do, the repair part, the garbage collector part. So we will follow with more episodes. See you next time.